All right. This is a big day for me. I am fresh out of 90 days of Facebook rehab. And sadly, Mr. Zuckerberg, I am totally unrehabilitated. This also means you won't be seeing much of anything on my timeline except possibly farming stuff, because obviously anything I put up there, they're going to try to hammer me on. So this new, I believe you guys gave me something. This new mis, dis, and malinformation platform that they're pushing, to me, is just Haman's gallows. It's something they're building to hang other people on, and they're going to get stuck up there themselves.
On Twitter?
Everywhere. I mean, if you step out of line on Facebook, you start saying you don't believe in certain things, or you don't believe this, or you don't believe that, or if elections you believe were not right, then you are participating in what they call mis, dis, or malinformation. Misinformation is you just got something wrong. Disinformation is you're spreading lies purposefully. Malinformation is you're doing it to hurt somebody in their eyes. But in their eyes, if you don't agree with them, you're doing mis, dis, and malinformation. Okay. And they have you seen who they put in charge of it? Anybody seen the little TikTok video of the woman they put in charge of it? It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. So anyway, we are live. I'm going to do a little, just bear with me about 8 minutes. We're going to go through a few little things here. Kind of a current headline thing. All right. This is Perry Stone right here.
Been in the past. And so I've also been told that the arsenals in the United States have emptied their bunkers. A lot of times I don't want to get into this, but they will leave weapons in a battlefield because they're inventing new weapons. So those are going to be outdated anyway, but they'll leave that on the battlefield, not bringing it back because there's nowhere to store it. And one of the reasons is the arsenals are buying up the food because they say this is where the next war is going to be, over food. And
interesting. War over food. And you can bet if certain high up entities are preparing for it, then they're going to try to push that. You know, see, we've been in rationing this whole time, and y'all never knew it. But I can order 5 cases of something, they'll give me 2. Sometimes I can order 2, they'll give me 1. And actually, our envelopes will say over your allotment. They are allotting us a certain amount of food. I used to could order 50 cases if I wanted. We got 50 cases in. Now I order 5, they give me 2. Order 2, they give me 0. You know, people are going to regret. There's people out there right now think that they have people under their thumb by saying, well, I'm not going to work for less than $18, $20, $25 an hour. And they don't know what they're doing is eventually they're saying is, you know, you're just incentivizing these people to replace you with the robots. All they're doing. And, you know, right now, people at McDonald's flipping burgers are making more than me after almost 4 decades. And it's just, what it's doing is making the middle class disappear. And you have the very rich and you have the bottom class. Yeah. And right now I was talking to one of the brokers about a certain type of burrito that I've struggled and used to get in. No problem. Now I just can't get it in for nothing. And they said, well, we got factories 2 or 3 around, but the biggest one's in California. And we hire people, we pay them $18 an hour. And then another factory down the road needs workers. So they offer them $20 an hour. So we got to give them 22. And then they offer 24, and then we got to, you know, and it's just an ongoing thing of the worker thinks they have the strong, but I tell you, if we're going into a time when food is going to be 40% of your weekly income, then people ain't going to have money for RVs, fancy cars, all these toys, gas, diesel. Yeah, they're not going to have money for all these luxury items that we've blown stuff on in the past, which means massive layoffs, which means we're going to go from no workers to a glut of workers, and they'll actually have their pick. So if you're a worker, you better be a good worker. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of these immigrants are going to start taking up.
Well, I mean, yeah, and you know what? It's odd. You displace something, and it's like putting your finger in water. You know, there's a hole there until you pull it out. There's no hole. Killed 63 million babies in our nation. 60 something million immigrants have come over the border. Give them, and listen, the ones that we've killed would have been paid our Social Security future. Give these people, give them Social Security numbers. Let them pay taxes. They're here. Was listening to a man who's a farmer in California. He said California's the canary in the coal mine, but nobody's listening because nobody says about on mainstream media. He said there used to be like 70 something thousand acres of 28,000 acres of asparagus. Now there's 700 acres of asparagus. He said we got workers that have been coming for years there, and all of a sudden the government will flag them for some unknown reason. And he said the mile harvest is sitting in the field waiting to be brought in. And we have to pay for them to sit in a motel for 2, 3, 4 weeks, sometimes longer, as they work out this paperwork snafu. And then they put untold restrictions on us, make it almost impossible for us to hire teenagers to get our crop in. And then they've done all this. And then they say, well, you're having to pay so much, so your harvest is too expensive. So we're going to go buy it from Peru or Mexico or something like that, where they have no restrictions whatsoever. So we have people, remember how when China starved, their land was just as fertile as it always was, but they put people in charge of it that made it to where they couldn't grow crops, and all of a sudden they were very dependent on government people. So, all people say, well, that'll never happen. It's like, if you really believe that it'll never happen, is that you are deceived. And I'll tell you something else too, and make you mad. But if you're one of those ilk that you just sit back and say, well, I ain't got to do nothing, God's just going to take care of it, you ain't spiritual, you're just lazy. Get out, vote, get out, be in an office if you need to. When the righteous are in charge, the people rejoice. When the wicked are in charge, the people groan. So who do you want to be in charge? You want to rejoice or you want to groan? Okay. So I had an interesting conversation with a person. And this really reminded me of this week, and it's just about 5.5 minutes, but we're going to listen to it. Who remembers who Carmen is or was?
Carmen? Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
Christian singer. Okay. All right. Here we go.
Mario, there was a rumor many years ago that there was a song called The Witch's Invitation, and that it dealt with an actual experience that you had encountered. Is that true?
Absolutely true. I was doing a chapel service at ORU, and the guest singer that day was Carmen, and he was at the piano, and Oral Roberts was there. Can you imagine? That was a crew that day. And so I was about to preach, and Carmen sang a song, and then he decided to stay at the piano, and I began to tell the story of Isaac Bonwitz. He was called Isaac Horowitz in the video. But Isaac Bonwitz is a real person who was one of the only people to get an accredited Bachelor of Arts degree from UC Berkeley with a major in witchcraft. And he had a house with the walls painted black. He had every form of magic, witchcraft, sorcery. And one day I met him on the streets. He had a full-length crepe robe on, crepe velvet, and he was carrying a human skull, and he had a sword.
Well, that
And
stands
he
out.
walked up, he came up to me, and I was witnessing on the streets of Berkeley, and he handed me his card, and he said, I'd like you to come visit me one day because I'd like to compare Christianity with witchcraft. So I took the card, and it had strange artwork on it, and I laughed and went home, forgot about it. Then I got a letter, just like in the video that Carmen did. And that letter had the decorations on it, and it said, I'd like to meet with you. And so I decided to crumple it up and throw it away in the wastebasket. And the wad of paper was in the air. God said, I want you to go. And that's when I went up to his house. It looked like the Addams family. And I went through the gate, went in, and he put me in this overstuffed chair, and he gave me some kind of tea with stuff floating on top of it. And so I avoided drinking it. And then he came out with a massive leather-bound book, and he was talking about all the people that he had cursed, people that he had used incantations, potions, and all this stuff. And then he came in front of the chair, put the leather-bound book, closed it up, put it on my lap, and then leaned on the arms and brought his face near mine, and he said, "What can your God do that compares with this?" I want to tell you, I got nothing. I had, I was like, I was a blank sheet of paper. And I looked up to God and I repented. I said, "Lord, forgive me for being an embarrassment." And when I said that, the Holy Spirit came upon me. And God said, "Do not put me to a stupid test." And the devil has as much potential to stand against God as an amoeba has to survive on the surface of the sun.
Come on.
And I sat there thinking, well, then what do you want me to compare? And that's when it downloaded. I looked at Isaac and I said, I'm not going to compare God and the devil. That's not a comparison, but I will compare you and me. And he looked at me kind of quizzically and I said, I'm going to compare you and I on the day we die. I'm going to put me in my deathbed and I want to imagine you in your deathbed. And I said, you look around these walls and you have made covenants with darkness. You made so many agreements with so many devils, and they all own markers. They have a right to you. You've given them that right. And on the day you die, they're going to come for you. And I wonder which of these things in this book you're going to say out loud to stop them. And I threw the book at it, literally. And I said, I know what I'm going to say. Satan, you cannot have me. I've been washed in the blood of Christ. I am saved by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. And he got so angry, he backed off and he was grabbing the leather book like it was a security blanket. And he said, you must leave now. He said, you got to get out now. And he threw me out. And he had wives. And one of his wives got saved.
Really?
And later, one of Isaac's wives got saved. And she later contacted us and said, that was the most terrifying experience of his life. And I love it the way Carmen he added his own line on the end. He said, next time think twice before you grumble with a man dog.
So this individual that I was speaking with, he fully believes what was told him, which was that at a certain year, he'd have so many children and he would drop over dead, which happens to be this year. And I was just speaking with him and he told that to me. And I said, I don't think I would listen to the devil. I said, he's lied since the beginning. And he said, oh, no, this was a good witch. That's like saying there's a saved devil. There are no good witches. Okay, now, who knows what do what thou will is the whole of the law? Who knows what that is? Do what thou will is the whole of the law. That's Satanist creed. That's if you're Luciferian, if you're a Satanist, that's your creed. Do what you want. That's the law. Do what you want. Okay.
We didn't know that.
Who knows what do what thou will, but do no harm is? Huh? No, well, do no harm. That's the doctor. But do what thou will, but do no harm. That is the Wiccan, part of the Wiccan read. Okay. Yeah. So there are people out there, they're dealing with the familiar spirits. They're dealing with things that, that they portray themselves. Remember, the Bible says that Satan appears as an angel of light. Okay. They're showing themselves as beings of light, and people are dealing with them, and they are they are interacting and they're just, spitting out information. Now, how could one prophesy you'll die at a certain age? Well, it don't take much that. I mean, if you're not living for God, Billy Graham, or a testimony once of a witches who said, this was just a witch. She got saved. She said, we used to go to Billy Graham crusades and we sat in the auditorium. We'd do our best. We'd put curse after curse after curse. And she said, what Christians don't understand is if there's no cause, the curse won't stick. In other words, if you're living right, it don't matter. There could be a witch sitting in this room, and as long as everybody here is living upright before God, not hiding things, then don't worry about it. They're just like a fly on the wall. You hear a buzzing, that's it. Okay, but these people are dabbling things. But let's just say that you're not serving God, so which leaves you wide open. By default, if you're not serving God, you're serving Satan. By default. If you're not serving God with the big G, you're serving God with the little G. And if he wants to take you. So, these things, they can do these things and make them look spiritual and smart and all this stuff. And it's just like somebody said once, if you were sitting in your house and you saw a coffee cup pick up and go right here, it's the only thing impressive about that is you ain't got spiritual eyes, because you seen me do the same thing right there, except you could see me. It's like, woo, hey, I can pick up a cup and move it too. It's just the fact that you can see me. Don't let these things play parlor tricks on you and trick you into thinking that there are no such things as good witches. Okay, there's people out there that believe they have good intentions, and there's people that have come to church that have got saved out of wicked, saved out of a lot of stuff. I'm a little bit of an odd duck in some ways, because I was one of the guys that whatever I did pretty good. I enjoyed it. When I was a heathen, I enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't do everything, but it wasn't for lack of trying. There wasn't exposure for a whole lot in Salem, Arkansas. But people come up and whisper about something, and they say, I can't believe that so and so did that. And it's like, yeah, I did that 30 years ago. What? Yeah, actually, I can tell you the names and places of the people that were with me, but I don't do that. So I like to say it like this, when I was a hedonist, I broke every bashful bone in my body, and I don't guess they ever healed. But stuff like that don't bother me. If the church is manifesting two attributes of Satan right now, and not of God, two attributes of Satan. They are accusing people. Who's the accuser of the brother? The devil. Or they're hurting people. They're killing people. How many your tongue is compared to a spear or a sword? How many? And don't raise your hand. Don't wiggle an ear. Don't do nothing. How many times in your past have you stabbed somebody? And yet when you've heard somebody talk about you, you were hurt, but yet you talked about people. We better show compassion. If Bible says, if you don't show compassion, don't expect to receive compassion. And we're right now in the middle of this abortion thing. And I tell you what, if people's had abortions, you can say that's wrong, but you better still show them compassion. You can stand up for a standard and still be nice. Okay, so now I'm going to dance on somebody's toes. Who knows what CRISPR is? CRISPR. CRISPR is a technology that they've used on plants for GMO for a while, but now they're applying it to something else. So let's spend 40 seconds here.
Down syndrome. And some fear the elimination of conditions like this would simply be a logical next step and set a worrying precedent.
It's an evolution of, pre-implantation genomics. We have selective abortion. We're already choosing potential for genetic disorders, etc. It's just one next step, and just maybe being able to tailor those genomes for certain traits.
Editing embryos is especially controversial because it can cause genetic changes to be passed down through the generations via what is known as germline editing.
So germline editing affects, potentially at least, your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and potentially until the end of the species.
Wow. In other words, every kind produces after itself, just the way God, intended it. But what's going to happen when we've got people among us that aren't fully human anymore? Will your faith survive when they finally trot out these things that they've been dealing with behind the scenes for so long and put them on national TV? And when these things get on there and say, oh, yeah, we're of a society of a different world, and, you're not alone. And it's just like the big fish lie from back in the 80s. This fish lived so many millions of years ago, and that's proof that your God don't exist because this is, and then all of a sudden they catch a lie, So will your faith survive these things being trotted out? Because it's coming. Okay. Now, remember, was it a year ago? They said they got their first monkey-human hybrid. Nobody batted an eye. Nobody said anything. They're using fetal parts for these things. Okay. The new law in California, is that if baby dies within 7 days after the mom of having it, it can't be investigated. So let's just say I was an evil person and needed that tissue, and Charlene was a young mom with no future. Say, you know what? We could take your baby and give you $10,000, and even if it's got strangle marks around its neck, they can't say anything. And maybe, you'll be better off, and we'll have what we want to. But
that's horrid. Big business.
It is. It is. And now they're trying to pass a bill for, I think they're trying to get it up to a year. They can take the baby out up to a year.
Not kidding.
One lady protesting. One lady protesting said, "I wish my mom had aborted me." It's like,
I've seen that sign.
It's like, come on, seriously. Everybody for abortion was never aborted. Seriously, you're enjoying life. Well, they won't have a quality of life. I guarantee you, somebody living in a mud hut in Africa enjoys their life just as much as you enjoy yours. Well, they're going to have sadness in their life. They're not going to be rich and have these things. Well, you know what? When somebody in your life died, somebody broke up with you, somebody left you, and your life was devastated, do you want somebody to come up and pop a cap in the back of your head because your life wasn't very good at that moment? No, because life has always had the potential of getting better. Okay, but who knows who Elon Musk is? Everybody's got to know who Elon Musk is. All right, here's what Elon Musk says about, remember, there's a place in the Bible, Revelation says, people will long for death, but death will elude them. Okay, here we go.
I think there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs on the medical front, particularly around the synthetic mRNA. Although you can basically do anything with synthetic RNA, DNA. It's like a computer program. So, I think with effort that's not too crazy, you could probably stop aging and reverse it if you want. You can basically do it. You can turn someone into a freaking butterfly if you want with the right DNA sequence.
Oh, you can turn somebody into a butterfly if you wanted to with the right DNA sequence. Isn't that interesting? Let's just say you're laying in a hospital bed dying, and they say, we've edited this gene out of this massive old tortoise. The tortoises live up to 150 years. Would you splice that into your DNA using CRISPR technology to survive? And all of a sudden you weren't fully human anymore? The hallmark before the flood was genetic manipulation. The giants, the Nephilim. Okay. It's the same in the days of Noah as in that, there's monkeying around with the human beings again. Okay. So, anyway. Lonnie, read scriptures.
Ezekiel 1:3. The Lord gave this message to Ezekiel's son, Buzzai, a priest before a a priest beside the Kidron River in the land of Babylonians, and he felt the hand of the Lord take hold of him. As I looked, I saw a great storm coming from the north, driving before it a huge cloud that flashed with lightning and shone with brilliant light. There was a fire inside the cloud, and in the middle of the fire glowed something like glimmering embers. From the center of the cloud came 4 living beings that looked human. They went in whatever direction the Spirit chose, and they moved straight forward in any direction without turning around. As I looked at these beings, I saw 4 wheels touching the ground beside them, 1 wheel belonging to each. The wheels sparked as it made a barrel. All 4 wheels looked alike and were made the same. Each wheel had a second wheel turning clockwise within it. The spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. So whenever the Spirit went, the wheels and the living beings also went. The Spirit came into me, and he spoke, and he set me on my feet. I listened carefully to his words. Son of man, he said, I am sending you to the nations of Israel, a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been rebelling against me to this very day. You must give them any message, whatever they listen. You must give them my message, whatever they listen or not. But they won't listen, for they are completely rebellious. Fill your stomach with this, he said. And when I ate it, it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. Then go to your people in exile and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Do this, whether they listen to you or not.
Okay. Why would God, knowing they won't listen, send somebody to tell them anyway? Because on that great white throne day, they will be without excuse. They will scream, I never knew. And suddenly on the big screen, God's going to say, picture of Lonnie talking to somebody. Hey, man, are you prepared for eternity? You know, Jesus loves you. You know, you don't have to die and go to hell. You know, and they're going to look back and they're going to remember. It's like, in fact, I had more than one chance. I think God gives everybody multiple chances. And how does he hold? I mean, okay, you're thinking, what about somebody in the wilds of Africa, something like that? Well, first off, creation preaches. You know, you see God's attributes by looking at everything. Okay. Secondly, he hasn't. You know, up in Alaska, there was somebody. You know, there's an Eskimo seeking God. And just like looking at all of nature and saying, God, there's got to be a God. And God appeared to him and says, somebody's coming to this port on this day. He will tell you about me. Okay, so. There was a delegation from that camp, went to that port on that day. There was a missionary got off, and they were like, okay, tell us about Jesus. We want to know. And thought, wow, I had a captive audience right away. Didn't even think about it. They went into a Muslim village in the backwater somewhere, and they were reading, sharing the gospel with them. And I think they had mentioned one of the Psalms or something like that. And they said, wait, that sounds just like something that sister, or not sister, but so-and-so, this lady over here is talking about. And so they went and found her, and they started quoting like one of the Psalms, and she was like, and she ran in and she got her paper. She had wrote it down. God had given her several of the Psalms verbatim, word per word, in a Muslim village. So if God's sending you somewhere, I bet you $1 he's went ahead of you and prepared for you. He's breaking ground, because we don't want to sow on hard ground. Why would you sow on hard ground?
Well, you think of Elisha. God had prepared the widow woman before Elisha ever arrived. Mm-hmm. Each time God sent somebody, he had said in the word, I prepared a place for you. I prepared a woman for you, on and on. And you say,
And, and whatever we're going to go through, I mean, okay, who in here can't look back in life and see where God has helped you numerous times? Where you were so stressed, how is this going to happen? You were so stressed, how is this going to happen? And yet somehow it just seemed to work out. So there's comfort in that. But who knows much about King Xerxes? He was the one that was, when Esther was there, he was the one that was in charge. How many thinks that, this he's got to have pretty good common sense because he's the leader of a kingdom. So, when your beautiful bride approaches you, it's kind of no big deal. You're going to extend a scepter and accept it, but people lived in terror of this king. Okay. He had a general who had served him faithfully his whole life and was in his later years. And his general, he even sent him a message. Man said, "You have served me so faithfully. Ask what you want. I'll even up to giving you part of my kingdom. I'll give it to you." And the general said, "Can you please release my son from serving in the army? I'm an old man, and he's here to help me with the place and farm. And back then, if you didn't grow, you didn't eat, And he's here to help me, And so he sent that message, said, "Please excuse my son from serving for you, and let him help me at my house." And they sent that to the king, and the king flipped. The king went and took that man's son and cut him in half, laid him outside his dad's house, and let the army march between the pieces. They said, "Nobody is exempt from serving me." Now, this is the person that Queen Esther risked her life to go and see, knowing that he could have replaced her with anybody like that, and probably had her as a wife and so many hundreds of concubines. So he wouldn't have been suffering for nothing. So, as we go through perilous times and we're dealing with some really crazy people, God's going to give us favor. Okay. But the thing is, like I said a few weeks ago, Mordecai told Esther, if you just sit back and just don't even try, help and comfort will come from somebody else, but you ain't going to live through it. Okay. We are dealing, the more and more I look into our food situation, people, I'm in the business, been in the business for almost 4 decades. So I know we are extraordinarily fragile. We've had 18 food distribution center in the U.S. and Canada taken out since the beginning of the year. Nobody knows about, except for very few people. 2 of them planes crashed into mysteriously. So we've had 2 power outages in Salem for no reason. You don't think somebody's hacking and surging things? And it don't matter how much food we got at the store or how much I've set back in freezers, because if we got no power for a day or 2, it's all trash. And quite honestly, the majority of the stuff in grocery stores is crap, unhealthy for you.
Amen.
It is. I mean, you're going to be far better growing it yourself than you'll ever, listen, raising a hog, raising a cow, raising this or that ain't going to put grocery stores out of business. People always want their special cuts. People always want this, always want that. That ain't going to happen. It would thrill me if Salem, Arkansas everybody got together this fall and had a hog killing. I mean, the only ones not happy about that would be the hogs, But listen, I've only been to one. It was a grand old time. I mean, everybody it was like it was like a picnic, except there was, a little flavor to it. But it was great. Fellowship, people working together, the men cutting, the women packaging. It was great. And I got to experience things that my granny did when she was growing up, because here they are, they're dumping the entrails out here, and they're always like, and And my granny's digging through that, looking for that leaf fat. You know, that really fine fat that's got the see-through in between. It's just, you know, because you take that and you wrap that around meat and you cook that, and that is primo yum. And you take that pork fat and you make homemade cracklings, and then you make crackling cornbread, and that is like something. If you ain't had homemade crackling cornbread, oh my goodness. Woo! Slap your mom on Mother's Day. Come on. I'm talking.
And he make soap out of the fat.
Yeah. I watched the man. We had it at his house. He had a shed out there. He went out there. He had a big bag of salt. Had a little cubicle set offside. Poured the salt down. Put a ham in there. Covered it with salt. Put another ham beside it. Covered it with salt. And you know, my dad loved that kind of ham. He said the only bad thing about salt cured ham is you got to eat it with a glass of water in one hand. It'll make you thirsty. But we as a people, we have got so far away, so disconnected from our food chain that you actually feel guilty about harvesting animals. Or as some people who have no clue say, don't kill that deer, just go to the store and buy meat where they make it. And you know what? That's a truer thing than, you know, everybody high up financially is invested in all this 3D printed meat, Petri dish meat. And that's where they are doing their best to guide. See, there's been a massive influx of takeovers and buyouts. You think that there's umpteen meat companies out there. No, there's 4 or 5. You think that there's umpteen lunch meat companies out there by just walking by case and looking at all the brands. No, there's like 5. You know how many media? There went from dozens of media stations. Now there's 5. And these people who have all this money are conglomerating all these things so they control the narrative. Right now, as of 2 years ago, China owns 200,000 acres of farmland. Mr. G owns 200,000 acres of farmland. That's 400,000 acres that they can shut down. We've got farmland out west that's in drought, so they can't grow. You know, they're putting practices in place that makes it so hard to find help, or you have to pay such an exorbitant amount because nobody's going to work for less than $18 an hour. You know, there was a place down in Georgia somewhere. ICE went in there and said, we're going to do it. We're going to do a thing. They're going to make it so hard on illegal aliens here that we're going to, and they did. They made it work. There were none in the county. And then people who had tomato farms, their whole crops dropped in the field because you had to pick tomatoes by hand. And there's nobody to do it. Can get no local kids to go out there and do it. Can you get a local kid to do anything nowadays?
No, sometimes.
Can you imagine the horror if they had to buck square bales of hay? You realize if somebody hadn't come up with round bales, how it would be almost impossible to farm right now because you couldn't find
Bless
somebody.
that person.
You know, and you know what? I don't blame the kids. I blame the parents because the parents are giving them money. You know, don't give them money. They don't need money. If they're going to sit at home and do it and play video games, they don't need money.
Yeah, I used to go out and pick up hay for 2 cents a bale.
Yeah.
All day long.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember the Nicholsville.
Yeah.
It was 2 cents
Oh,
when I was.
When they got desperate for help and went up to quarter bale, everybody was rich. I mean, rich. And that's back in the 80s.
I got ripped off.
You know?
I shoveled soybeans one day for this farmer all day long, and he gave me $2 and a meal. I thought, wow.
But you know what? $2 went a long way back then, and gave you a work ethic too. You know, listen, hard work is good. It's good to have hard work. And I didn't grow up on a farm. I kind of wish I had. You know, I was one of those sullen teenagers that, you know, my dad had to basically hold a gun on me to get me to mow the yard, you know. But I went from 83 to 84. I went from working at a gas station, and then my dad had $10,000 worth of bad credit out to friends. And so we had the bankruptcy, and I went for about, I don't know, good part of a year broke. Car broke down, didn't have money for gas anyway. Car broke down. And I was selling parts off my car to buy cigarettes. I was cleaning the house because I was a 2-pack a day smoker back then. Okay. I was cleaning house for my mom for her to buy me generic cigarettes. And I was blowing through them because she wouldn't buy me enough. So I said, bring me some PA papers home. And I would pitch off the end of, because mom and dad smoked too. And yeah, by the way, don't have kids and tell them not to do stuff you do because it ain't gonna work. So I would pinch off the ends of their cigarettes and roll them up in PA. You talk about stout tobacco, pre-smoked tobacco in a PA with no filter. That was stout tobacco. By the time I got on at Town and Country, I was like, I love this job. I love having money. You know, I would work. People say, you want to take off and go to the party? I'll work your hours. You know, in other words, I don't ever want to be broke again. It made a very good impression on me. I could go nowhere. I could do nothing. And, you know, and my parents were good parents, but they were smart enough not to give them every whim. They said, one time come up, I didn't have the money. And I said, my car insurance is due. They said, better sell a gun. It's like, okay, sold a gun, you know? So I like what one guy said. It said in the 70s, the teenagers were the illegal aliens of the 70s. I mean, you want something done, teenagers were begging because their parents weren't buying them $20,000 cars, giving them gas, giving them credit cards, buying their food, you know, all this stuff. They were leaner times, but, you know, they were somewhat better times too. Life was somewhat slower. I kind of miss the America of our youth, you know, but what they call coming is called the fourth industrial revolution. But here's what Klaus Schwab said, allegedly, even though it's on video, but I don't have the video pulled up, so I'll say allegedly. He said the fourth industrial revolution won't be a change in machinery as much as it'll be a change in the people. In other words, he's into transhumanism. So remember, while we're just enjoying life, there's people with huge finances moving towards this. Ken Clement prophesied of a fourth Reich, rising and fall of the Fourth Reich. We've had Hitler was the Third Reich. Okay. He said the rise and fall. So all of a sudden, here we are in the middle of all this. We got millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires moving society towards a certain way that they want, and all of a sudden there's talk of Nazis again. We've got a German leading this whole thing. Guess he's in charge of it. You know, and yet I guarantee you 80% of people in this room didn't know a thing about it. So you don't have to be terrified, and you don't have to watch the news, and you don't have to be some QAnon conspiracist to just go out there. Listen, if you want to know, the world could end tomorrow, and CNN wouldn't report about it for 2 years, allegedly. You know, so you better go in here with your eyes awake, going on, because, well, okay, the prophet handed the king some arrows and he said, so-and-so nation is going to come against you. Now, smite the arrows against the ground. And he did it 3 times, and the prophet was so mad. He said, you should have smote the ground many times, because now you're going to have 3 victories, and then they're going to kick your hiney. So if God hands you arrows and says, this is about your enemy, beat the ground until they break. Okay? Don't you back up. Okay? This is what's coming this fall is going to be dark. They're going to try to lock people down again. They're going to push narratives again. Things will show up again, probably. So remember, are we going to fall lockstep with what they say? Or are we going to say no in a polite way? Okay. All right. You're up.
You know, the bottom line is God is still on the throne, and He's got things for us to do. And you can't just go around, you know, like that. So listen to what He's got. Let's do it, and we'll be all right. And forget all the chaos that's going on. So extend your hand and receive your blessing. Thank you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and grant you His shalom. Amen. God bless you.
Amen.
You want to give this to our seats?
Yes, my God.
It's old.
Oh, and happy Mother's Day to all your mothers.
Yeah, that's the first thing Pete said to me.